to happen for teams. But if you happen to be joining us and not really clear what the Teams space is, this is part of the Office 365 and Microsoft 365 suite. So you've got the Office 365 suite and the Microsoft 365, which is kind of a suite of suites almost. Teams itself is really a single access point to conversation files, notes, tasks. And I really like to point out that it's an access point because you really need to think about the products behind it as well. You cannot really ignore SharePoint or OneDrive if you're going to get into these spaces and teams. It's really reliant on those and is kind of a window into those spaces. Big things we're thinking about right now and are often part of the first deployment is those chat and presence features. So we know Microsoft is still looking to get rid of Skype, and that's really kind of ending. So those were big things recently to really say, we need the chat features, we need the presence features, even if we're not ready for Teams yet, let's get those things going, which again is the first thing I'm seeing people deploy in the last week is just get the chat out there, get people connected again. It does have those integrations with all the Microsoft products. These are just some of the common ones that we run into or often pull through, but then there's also integrations with non-Microsoft products through connectors there. So just a little bit of a what is Teams itself. All right. One of my favorite Microsoft MVPs, and Matt Wade, has some fantastic graphic representations of Teams. So if you've not run into his everyday guide for Office 365 groups, it was the first thing that actually clicked for me to say, oh, that's what I all get when I create a team or when I create a group. This visual is one I share at least a couple times a week. So here you can see if I actually create something from Teams, I actually have a whole set of products I can use. It's a little bit based on licensing, but if I'm creating it from another avenue, Yammer, SharePoint, Office 365 groups through mail, I might get a slightly different set. So that's something to be clear on, and kind of when you're pushing these things out, what am I getting? Note this is with the teams, not just the teams for chat. So this will be hit on later, but that visual of it, I definitely highly recommend reading through that guide, especially if you're newer to this. As just a summary of what you get when we talk about different things. So Office 365 groups. If you kind of ask 20 questions about this, down in its core, it's a list of people. But in reality, it comes with a SharePoint site. It has a default planner. It's going to bring you that Outlook calendar and inbox. That is a little bit gray, depending on how you. Oh, I'm getting feedback. I don't know if that was okay. All right. And then, of course, it can be joined to Teams. So then when we tack on the Teams and do that join, you can post, which used to be called conversations until very recently. So it's really the chat experience within a set of people. You could share those files, of course. That is supported by the SharePoint team site behind the scenes. Of course, Microsoft uses the same terms there. There is a wiki area. I tend to push to OneNote, but the wiki's just fine there for core notes. And don't forget that you can add channels and you can add tabs to integrate those. So if we just think about what are these things at their very core, this is what comes with them. All right, so let's get into, and maybe this fear at this point of too many teams is just a moot point. 2 weeks ago, this was, a very big deal of, well, if I push teams out to everybody, isn't it just going to sprawl? Just knowing a couple of the technical limits, you can have 500,000 or 500,000 teams here per tenant. So you're probably not going to use that. Microsoft themselves says they use 160,000 teams, and they're letting their 20,000 employees all create them freely. They don't have to appear in the global address book. You can kind of turn that on and off via PowerShell if you need to. They can be, and they are, security trim. So if you're not a member of a team, you're not having that kind of clutter up your space. And each individual Microsoft Notes can only create 250 teams. So if you're worrying at this moment about the ballooning, there's both space for it and some limits around it. And then if you're worried, and again, this worry is a little bit more subsided and not top of mind right now, what if they go unused and orphaned? So what's going to happen in 6 months time when we have these created quickly? Well, we could set expiration dates around those with some light additional licensing around Azure Premium P1. You could certainly review just the admin center to understand which ones are active and which ones are not. We can even prompt owners to renew them, make sure they're still active. And then should something get deleted, and I actually just ran into my first case of this last week, they were cleaning through the ones created. Somebody didn't note the whole list in exchanges or in their email and said, yeah, go ahead. All those are old, don't need them anymore. Of course, the next day CTO says, you know what, that was one of our strategy sites. Can you get it back? And in 2 clicks time, basically, it was back because it was only a few days later. We've got up to 30 days to recover those sites. So those are just a little bit of what were the common fears going on. Whoops, jumped right to the wrong slide here. Giving it away. All right, jump back here. Sorry about that. All right. So why do we manage them at all? So these would be things to think about. We don't want the Wild West, but we know we've got to kind of manage these. So, make sure that to some extent you're kind of at maybe the far end of this in a few weeks' time, making sure that content is active and relevant. People might be kicking things up and then they just go unused or they end up duplicating things. So we want to keep search relevant and active so that we're not coming up with sites that are unused. So that's why we want to manage them. We also want to make sure that we're keeping the security as clean as possible. So if there's going to be complex security going on, external access, just being on top of those. So we do want to spend some time thinking about how we manage it. And then my advice would be as soon as you can, make sure most sites have 2 owners so that we don't have some of those orphaned situations. I think some of us have come from places where SharePoint got to be the Wild West and it was hard to reorganize. I think Teams is less of that problem, but there is still the possibility of sprawl. So both don't worry about it too much at this point, and then know that these are the benefits of taking some time to clean up when we have that opportunity. All right. So there are some key decisions, and this is my big takeaway for this. So most of that was kind of just set up, things that might be on your mind. You're just getting kind of up to date with it. But what are those decisions we need to actually be thinking about as we jump in? Some of these at this point could be delayed a little bit. Let's think about them down the line. Some of them you're going to need to know right up front as you're deploying. So what's the purpose for your organization? Right now, a lot of companies have some really clear focus. We need to get people working remotely in a way that we just never have before. Other things could be, driving culture, making decision making easier, sharing collaboration easier, no longer working in the file share. These are all purposes that I've run across previously. Are you going to allow the teams? And I haven't come up with a better way to say this, but this is the section within the Microsoft Teams product that is the true Teams space where we are attached to SharePoint and based there rather than just the chat. So very new clients to that in these weeks are really just not going here yet. They're using group chat and things like that to just get people connected. But this should come and follow shortly. Do you want to allow all possible features? Now, based on that diagram I showed you early on there, you could see there was kind of a path to say, here's all the Teams content, and there was a separate path to say, here is the Outlook features. Depending on what order you create them or any PowerShell scripts you run afterwards, you can have both an inbox and an Outlook calendar, as well as the Teams chat and all the features that go with Teams. So if you're thinking, I want to leave all possibilities open, my recommendation there is actually create it via a SharePoint Teams site, that template, and then join it to the Teams product. You will have all possible entities there. So if people want the inbox and the calendar. But if that is of no use, no calendar, no inbox is needed, you could simply create it through Teams and get that Teams chat. All right, a couple other key decisions here. Who are you going to let create these things? Again, it's you can have a very open, let everybody do it, needs to happen, or hey, it's a request through IT, and then there's some room in between to allow some key people to be able to create them. Are we going to think about external and guest access? We'll talk through what those mean. When are we going to add a team to a group, or when might you have a group without teams? This is becoming a rarer case. Are you going to allow private channels? And then finally, what do we think about templating down the way? So I'm going to walk through each of these slides here. So from Microsoft's perspective, here are some of the common business decisions here. So again, 2 weeks ago, this was, why are we doing this? What are we going to go through this effort? This is a lot to ask of people. Now it's almost a necessity, but we're reducing email. We're trying to collaborate faster. We're trying to share externally. Often Teams is an easier place to share externally than some of the other methods that we might have. Employee engagement. We're trying to all say better connected now that we're not able to just kind of be in the office together as much. And then there's some things like real-time recognition. How do we still kind of create some of those warm, fuzzy feelings at work in this turbulent time? So thinking about what those purposes are, and then what are you going to then prioritize as you launch these? Roadmap. Next big decision is, how are we going to go about deploying this? So I'll start with the bottom up one, which might be happening more right now than ever, which is open it up, wide open. It's just got to go, big bang approach. This tends to be when you're not maybe working with a consultant or you just need to get started. It's going to be really common right now. Alternatively, the two ways that I've seen teams approach this when they work with me is launching it simply as that instant message and presence features, and then doing some training around that, maybe a lunch and learn or a recorded meeting to say, here are the base features of how you start using Teams, getting around it, understanding how to do the reactions and the mentions and all that in there. So that's one way to do it. Just get it out there as the chat feature. This is really the Skype for Business replacement path, and then kind of stopping there. The alternative, and a lot of times I shouldn't even say alternative, in parallel, you can launch all of those features maybe to a couple pilot teams. So if you've got some power users, some really high need areas, those teams, you might be rolling out that team space with a dedicated site and channels and thinking about tabs and how they're going to work together there. And again, you can kind of open it wide open as well. Now, following anything like a pilot of departments, once you've had a little time with those and some key decisions get made, maybe you're able to kind of work out what's hard about those, then you really want to be able to give everybody the path to say, hey, we're going to get to you in April, we're going to get to you in June, we're going to be coming around to your team to what you need, and let them know where they are on your rollout plan. So you can start with just the chat. You can go into some pilot teams, and then obviously you want to have some sort of rollout plan of how are we going to get to all departments, how are we going to get to major projects, and then kind of what's our cadence from there on out of when people request one, how do they do that? All right. Jump back again to that feature set decision. So if when I was explaining this without the visuals, it was unclear, again, I'm going to refer to that info graph here. So if I would create it from my Outlook inbox, planner, SharePoint, or stream, this blue line here, I get everything that's in the blue, which discludes any of the teams, but gives me an inbox and a calendar. So if that's important, if you're looking to replace public folders and things like that, shared inboxes, going so far as to try to replace distribution lists, this can be a path of importance to you. You can always add on and join to teams. Microsoft is making it very easy to take an existing group and join teams. The reverse is slightly harder. If I decide to go with Teams and I get everything in purple, it's a PowerShell script to go flag and turn these things on. And I'm not sure if that's going to eventually be discouraged there. Do note, and I don't touch on Yammer much, not a huge Yammer user. It does now also create an Office 365 group with all the features you're seeing in green, and then that comes through your Yammer feed. So from what I can tell, Microsoft is really kind of making you pick up front, what's your conversation channel going to be? Is it Yammer? Is it Outlook? Is it Teams? And of course, many of us are focused right now on Teams. All right. Next major decision. How are we going to get through site creation here and Teams creation? So who's going to be able to do it? Option one, kind of the classic option, is IT is going to be the bottleneck on this, and only IT is going to be able to create these. So we better be able to handle that influx at this point. Option two is you can whitelist some users. Maybe they've had a bit of training, they've used it in the past, they're power users, they understand the roles and responsibilities. Again, in an ideal case, I want people like this to have been through some training, understand, and maybe you have a few, here's the responsibilities, here's the expectations of people who create these. That can come around maybe a little bit later at this stage, but you broaden that group of people who can create it. However, you can take the Microsoft approach, which is open it wide open. Everybody's got the create site button. Everybody can create a team, and then you manage it on the back end and you audit what's coming through. That might be more realistic right now. But we have to take that moment in a few months' time to say what's all been created. Let's review what's still active so that we can just keep our arms around our own systems. If you're going to do those things, how are we going to actually let IT get those? Do we have a ticketing system in place? Does IT have an email address? How are we going to get those requests in? You can go a little further and say, you know what, we're going to create a simple form, maybe using Microsoft Forms to ask some base questions so that that ticket comes in with all the right information that is needed so this can be processed as quickly as possible. And then finally, if you're going with a wide open approach, people can do those directly in Office 365. There's the Create Site button on the SharePoint landing page, and Teams itself has a Create New Team if you're letting people do that. I'm not going to get into the technicals of how to make those changes. My focus here is what decisions do you need to be thinking about. However, those are really well documented out there. So those steps, especially around how to let people create and how to limit that, are pretty well documented. I will note if you're truly going and trying to lock down, it gets into some PowerShell scripts to do that full lockdown. Simple things like hiding the Create Site button is a toggled feature behind the scenes in the admin center for SharePoint. So there's ways to get some of the big gates closed down, and then there's a PowerShell to get kind of everything closed down. All right, so I kind of alluded to what if you want to have a form of some sort? What do we need to be thinking about? So after doing this a number of times, I thought through what are the things I must know if I'm going to create a site. So if I'm IT and I'm going to create a site for a team that's requesting it, what do I need to know? I need a site name and a URL. Now you may take their URL and say, you know what, we're going to apply a naming convention to that. If it's a HR wants a site for their department, it's going to be department-HR, something like that. So feel free to tack on your naming conventions here, but let them tell you a little bit about how they want to be named. And do note if you're putting this in Outlook, that will affect what their email address is through that Outlook. I do look for ideally 2 owners or more. So this just saves you from orphan. We know we're going to have a lot of people working flexible schedules here. So this just makes sure that if somebody else needs to change security, we've got more than one person at hand. I like ideally a description of the site, at the least maybe a checkbox to say, is this a project site? Is this a department site? Is this a cross-functional team that's doing a process? Is this some sort of user group or committee? What's the purpose? So that could be more of a couple of sentences, or this could be truly just check the box of which type. That later can help you, if you can track this, to have some information around what's the expected life cycle of these sites. A department probably lives indefinitely. But our projects, ideally, all projects have an end date. Some of them feel like they go on forever, but they should have an end date and a deliverable. So that is information that you might want up front to help you on the back end when you're trying to manage the influx. Things like, are guests going to be needed for this? We'll talk a bit about the difference between guest and external access, or is external access needed? Some nice to have things you might ask people, but you wouldn't need to start up the site are, what's the members list? Just give me the list of people, you can punch them in right away. Otherwise, the owners of the site that you've assigned can modify those later. Are there any channels that you're going to set up by default, either as part of a template that's been determined, or that this team would like you to have right out of the gate for them? This is one I'm almost ready to pull out. Is this being attached to a hub? I'm finding less and less that teams themselves need to be attached to a hub, but there is the nice to have. Say you've got a client site, if I think about myself, we've got maybe a communication site per client, and then we associate different projects with it. It might be nice for just the sake of navigation, especially for our sales team and leadership, to be able to come to that site and see all of the teams that are related. It's becoming less and less of a thing. I think all of us are living in Teams, and right now, Teams does not indicate whether or not something is part of a SharePoint hub. So I am so on even pulling this one out of here. You may want to consider your storage limit. So, especially if we're getting a lot of requests, we want to be able to manage how much content's coming through. We know our subscriptions can, be modified to allow more data. The data that's allowed is pretty hefty depending on your size. But if you want to lock, projects or departments down to a specific space, think about that. Wouldn't be something you'd ask your end users. You'd probably have a default per project type or team type. And then finally, one thing that's easy to miss is great. HR comes to you and says, we need a department site. We need to start working together on Teams and in a SharePoint collaboration space. The next question is, okay, great. Once they're done with that work in progress information, do they have a place to deploy that information? Do we have an intranet? Is this all going to be via email? Can we help them out by pairing a team site with a communication site that can be deployed to everybody? So some of these may be kicking up in mind. A lot of project sites come in. Is there a place we need a communication site around the status of all projects for the benefit of our leaders? So again, might take a little bit to get there, but start thinking about having those paired sites with both the team space and your communication space. I'll pause for just a second there because I tend to talk fast. Questions? I haven't seen any come through chat. All right, doesn't look like anybody's jumping off mute. So we'll jump next to the external versus guest access. Admittedly, I use these interchangeably wrongly for too long. So external access is really the best way to maybe think about this if you've been in the Skype for Business world, is more like federation. I trust an entire domain. So you can make decisions like, hey, everybody at HBS, we're going to expect that we're going to partner with you, and all of those team members are allowed through. Versus the guest access, which is I trust Sarah individually and I'll trust other team members specifically, but I'm not going to, I'm not partnering with a whole domain. So let's jump back up to guest access. So if you're considering any of those, maybe you've got a very close partner company, consultancy, something like that. Are you going to allow it? Yes or no? That's a decision you can make. You can just straight up say no. If so, are you going to whitelist a few domains? So there's a place in the admin center in Office 365 to say, here are the trusted domains. Then you could be specific and say, well, they're not coming into our intranet. They're just in this specific project team with us. Maybe it's a merger situation or something like that. So then you can allow which sites, really which teams are allowed these to have these domains come through. And then finally, who else is allowed? This would be one I would keep pretty close to IT, but you might have a few people you're also allowing to change those things and allow that external access per site. So that's external access. Then the guest access. So again, are you going to allow it at all? You can straight up just say no guest access. I think this is more unrealistic. And one of the big benefits of Teams is that external sharing. So then it's just a matter of who can invite a guest. How are you going to kind of dole out that responsibility? And one odd note that I'll bring up, our security guy here, Mark, just calls attention to this at every client, and I really want you guys to know about this. Right now, the way the defaults work in Azure AD, there is a setting that guests are allowed to invite other guests. Now, they can't automatically pass through. They're not automatically approved. But I think it's too easy to just hit the approve button on something and not think about it, because often I think we think, well, if they're asking for it, they probably need access to this. So this just gives you a vulnerability that I don't think is necessary. If a guest, maybe another individual from a vendor you're working with, needs a secondary person, they can come through you rather than being invited by your guest there. So that's a setting behind the scenes in Azure AD that you can manage. It's just a simple toggle off to say that that particular guest setting is not allowed. All right, if you haven't seen any of the visuals of external sharing, I want to call attention to what the defaults are, because they're pretty wide open. Both SharePoint and OneDrive are defaulted to anybody and allowing to share. Now, that doesn't mean that your site is anonymous. That just means you can send links to anonymous people and not have anybody log in. So think about whether or not you want to come down to new or existing external users, which means they have to have some sort of login with you, or only existing ones. Maybe you want to kind of stop a flow for a bit. or you can simply be the least permissive, which is nobody who has access to our system that is outside of our domain. And again, if you want to kind of get into some of those details here, these are literally, this one is a copy straight from the admin center, and these are details from a white paper and information from Microsoft here. So readily available information there, just a little bit more detail about what those different settings mean. Next one I'll show is just a little bit about guest access. And do note, based on the settings on the previous screen, Teams is then kind of somewhat limited, and you can come back even further restrictive, but you can't be more open in Teams than you are in SharePoint and OneDrive. Next thing I'll show here is a couple more screenshots of just kind of what guest access looks like. So if you kind of want to know what's that email look like to say you've been added as a guest, what's that experience look like?
Hey, Sarah, you went quiet here on us. Hold on a second.
I have no audio either from Sarah.
A little better.
Okay, interesting. It's good to connect. Every once in a while, this headset gives me trouble. Let me know if it's coming through now.
It's coming through now.
Okay. Holler if it happens again. This is usually a great headset until that happens.
As for any headset. Correct.
Yeah, that's, so I'll backtrack on the guest access. Did you hear be on all things external access or the previous screen?
Yep, I think it was on this one. It's there going out.
Fantastic. Thanks for the heads up. All right. So you'd see what the email looks like that comes through, a little bit about the experience. It largely looks the same. I'm a guest in 2 different other experiences. And the one thing maybe I'll show off there, I wasn't going to do too much demo, but just so you know where that shows up here, I'll just bring this up. If you're a guest in somebody else's environment here, so you guys are seeing this over the top, it'll show up this way. You could switch between. I can't wait until they allow for multiple screens, which is supposed to be coming on the roadmap, so that I can have it up and be in multiple clients, because I do feel like I sometimes miss things in my own environment when I'm over in a client's environment. But that guest access is pretty strong. What they do stop guests from doing versus having somebody be truly within your team as a full user is a lot of the things that you can build out or add on. You're not going to let them create a team. Right now, they can't share a true chat file, things like that. So there's some limitations. They're not seeing your org chart. So there's some limitations to somebody being a guest. But as far as being able to kind of participate with the team, those core features are there. All right. Get over to the next one here. So next decision would be around private channels. Now, Microsoft for a long time, I didn't think was going to go here, but it was the most requested user voice request out there. So they kind of had to, and they gave in on this. My job was a little easier before this because it was just, no, you can't do that. Now it's a little bit more complicated to say when are the appropriate times to use it. And I still think this is not even 80-20 rule. This is like 90-10 or less. So you can straight up as an organization say no private channels. However, we should know what they are and what cases they are useful. So a private channel is actually has to be a sub team of a main team. And I think this is one of the first things, especially those from the SharePoint world, who are always like, oh, we could just slip somebody in kind of below in our org structure there of our sites. You can't add somebody to a private channel who is not part of the team. It's always a subgroup. So don't use this to have the CEO come in and view a channel of the finance site. That's not an appropriate use of it. They'll have to be on the entire group. So if if the larger set of channels is not for that person, then we really shouldn't be. So I think there's a tipping point to say if you're doing a lot of these, then you probably have two different teams in reality. I see cases for kind of maybe one, maybe two of these per team. Now gets into personal opinion. I have heard some good stories about where this can be useful with more, but it's rare cases there. But you do want to know that behind the scenes, Microsoft is handling this by creating another site collection. So, 5 years ago, you could have a whole intranet in one site collection. Now we've got channels that are driving entire site collections. I do not believe they appear in the admin center, so you're not seeing those rack up the same way as we see new teams rack up in there, but we want to be cognizant of what that's creating. So if the visual of that is simply a little lock key here, you must be a member of it. Ironically enough, the owners of the team do not have to be in the private channel. And then another oddity is whoever is the last member of that group becomes the owner of it, so it doesn't get truly orphaned there. So those are things to watch out for. A couple of places where I have heard this work. If I've got a small environment and the department has a team, and then maybe leadership just wants to have their own small space within there, but we don't feel it's necessary to have a whole team. I would still argue, don't be afraid of sprawl and just split those, but that is a case that I will kind of allow for. Another interesting one is some people are using teams for one-on-one communication. So me with my lead, but she's got 14 other leads. Rather than having 14 teams to manage those people, she could have a Kelly's lead channels and then private for each one. Potentially could come up here. So those are ones that you want to watch out for. I just saw the question come through in chat. I will try to pull those PowerShell scripts links out here. If anybody else, I know there's others on the phone who probably deal with that just as often. If they have that link handy, great. Company-wide. Admittedly, up until a week or so ago, I wasn't spending a lot of time on the org-wide or company-wide teams, but I will talk about it. I don't have a slide about it here. It is one that I am now recommending. I used to see it as a competitor to the intranet, but the fact is, especially this week, news is coming fast and quick, and we might need that. So there is the ability to create an org-wide team. It's got some special cases kind of around security there, and it can be shown to everybody. I don't have an example of it, but let me show you a demo space where we were talking about it. So if your group is considering going this route, I've got this little demo environment here. So if this was an org-wide team, it would show up here that it's org-wide rather than a private team. In the general channel, you can do things like these announcements. You can actually get down to, oh, that's not the one I wanted to go to. Manage the channel. You can do things like, hey, only some leaders and the owners here can post messages. So if you're trying to get out emails fast and furious over the last couple weeks here in upcoming days, this might be a place if people are starting to come to Teams to use to post those messages, replacing emails, come to people where they are, or at least, repeat them in the email and in Teams. So you can lock down a channel of who can post. Generally, we're using Teams so everybody can communicate. So this is anybody, this is only owners. And one thing we're recommending as we're setting this up, so you might use general for announcements. You might find something that's a silver lining or a recognition or a kudos area while,
We lost her again.
Okay, looks like I was muted. Top of reconnecting. Are you guys able to hear me now?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, so this was just kind of a light channel. Again, if you're going to be pushing on an org-wide channel, think about these things, locking it down, maybe a space for everybody to do some light sharing. And then right now, something like a Teams or a Microsoft Teams help space to start divvying out tips and tricks and knowledge sharing and things like that. This can also be a community help board. So as you get people really good at using Teams, others may be lagging behind and struggling with it. This is a great place to have people help each other and not overload IT. So think about that as your org-wide. Sorry, I didn't have a slide on that, but that would be the idea, and a couple maybe recommended channels within there. All right, good question. All right, so I'm going to jump into next one here. If we're thinking about private channel use, you guys can still hear me, right? I'm getting nervous now about that.
Yes, we hear you.
Fantastic, thank you. If you're thinking about creating those private channels, I find this really helpful, and the link is here. It's really just a doc at Microsoft.com here around private channels. This is a first glance to me of ask a couple questions. If you're saying yes or no to those, here's the recommendation. And it goes to everything from, yep, create a private channel in an existing team, or really you need to consider creating a new team, and a few kind of options in between there. So use some of these things that people have thought about already, of the ups and downs of what is useful to help you with those determinations. All right, slightly more fun stuff. I was getting at that with maybe a recognition or kudos area. You have the decision behind the scenes in the team's admin center to say, are memes allowed, are GIFs allowed, are stickers allowed? I don't use stickers much. Some of the memes. The big one with my team is the GIFs. And Microsoft is at this point kind of noting that if you allow some of these things, especially in the GIF space, you get actually a 20% rise in adoption. So adoption can be a concern. I think it's going to be forced adoption right now, but we can still let people have a little bit of fun in their day while keeping it professional. Usually when I'm giving the training and everybody at this point is going back and forth with, GIFs and memes and things like that, I have to remind people there's, legal things involved in this, and all of your conversations are part of your professional life, but we also need to have some of that. Next thing I will note is the template. So this is a little bit lighter. This is an area I don't tend to dabble. The developers on my team, love this possibility, but I want you to know it's out there. So are you going to have any templates? So this means that we can have things like committees, projects, process sites that are kind of the same every time. Maybe you run agile processes and projects, and you really need to have the kind of a consistency across those. So through PowerShell, you can build some of these things and dig into this space. Microsoft has a few defaults. They tend to be, I think, in the educational space and maybe healthcare and finance. If anybody lived through kind of the Fab 40 of the day, it reminded me of that. They're basic. They hit a few verticals. They're not for everybody. But you can build your own. You have to know a little bit about, kind of driving things through code and PowerShell and everything. I can't wait till this is maybe slightly available through the UI, but if you have developers at hand, people who want to get into that, this is a great place to kick up those project sites consistently, time over time. All right, I'm going to move my stuff over here. So get to kind of a wrap up point of this. What are you maybe considering as next steps based on this conversation? So I would go ahead and review the team's admin center. So I had a couple notes in here of things you might want to toggle on or off or make decisions about. Go ahead and check what you're at today. Get your global admin. If you've got the dedicated either SharePoint or Teams admin, you can look at those admin centers. Otherwise, talk to your global admin there and just find out, what are your settings like today? Is your security all the way up to anonymous? Do we need to bring that down? Do we need to toggle off, external and guest users, things like that? Think about that. Think about who do you have for power users or early adopters in your organization you could pilot some teams for projects or departments with. IT, of course, great place to start. Plan to launch, and this might really move almost to the top right after you check some core settings in the Teams Admin Center, is launching out the chat and presence feature. So that presence is, keeping track of your Outlook calendar and your activity on your computer. and do some training. So find some recorded training. Microsoft's got some basics out there, and I know a lot of agencies, local and otherwise, are putting things out there fast to try to help. My own team is doing exactly that. I'm sure the concurrency team and other teams in the area are doing the same thing and are ready to support as you need to launch and want to lean on somebody who's been through this. And then planning rollouts for the extended team. So as you have a moment to breathe, how are we going to get through every department? Because this might be a while. How are we going to get to them? What's the rollout plan there? Now I have this noted as how HPS can help, but this is really how any, if you need to come to a vendor, if you're feeling overwhelmed, how can any team help? Helping you think through those meetings, have those remote calls with your teams, training on chat, providing that live training, getting recordings of these things, planning the rollout, and simply just being there for support. We've got some great teams in the area, and they're ready to help in this time. So just know that you can get that assistance if this still feels overwhelming and there's too much to think about and you need some more guidance. I do want to call out a few burned fingers, and then we'll kind of get to some last considerations and I'll wrap it up. So one thing I'm hearing these days that I was a little surprised by is people want Teams, but they don't want to turn on OneDrive, and this is simply not something that we can do. Because the chat and its ability to attach files is based on having existing OneDrive, you don't have to push it on people. You don't have to necessarily even encourage its use, but you have to have it available to support Teams. Watch out for naming conventions, just so you can kind of sort through your sites in the admin center. Luckily now, this is less of a big deal because Microsoft has finally let us rename even the URLs through a redirect. Don't forget about tabs. People spend a lot of time thinking through what channels go in a team, but then they forget about the navigation of tabs. Bring through a SharePoint homepage that you've put a lot of time and energy into. Bring through a spreadsheet that everybody references. Bring through help websites and things like that. Those tabs are fantastic. And if you don't know what I mean by the tabs, let me pull up my team one more time here. That's the links across here. If I hit my plus sign, you can see I can point to a document library, I can point to a planner, a SharePoint site. This is a great way to create a little resources page, even a Word document or specific spreadsheet or a form. OneNote, really classic thing to bring through. A lot of the Microsoft features you can bring through there.
Sarah?
Yes.
Very quick question about the previous topic about the naming conventions.
Yes.
I saw something recently that there's something in Azure AD where you can upload a CSV file of prefix, stem, and then suffix for groups. Would that drive anything with the Teams naming conventions?
Because the groups, because the teams are based on groups, that should fall in line there. And I just
Okay.
I haven't run into that, but it would line up because really behind the scenes when you create a team, it is creating an Office 365 group. So those naming conventions and any new features around it should line up nicely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. The other thing I would call out is just a little bit around channel creation. Don't try to cover every little subtopic. Maybe let this be a little bit more organic. Don't overthink it. Kind of get how many is too many. So if you'll see on my own example, let's go to my division or my department here. So these are the ones I show. I happen to hide away the Dynamics 365 because you don't want me talking to anybody about Dynamics 365, but that happens to be what half of my team does. But I keep the rest of them up here. I've got other ones where I hide most of the channels because they're not as relevant to me there, and they're not spaces I spend time in. But they could get quite lengthy if all these were ones that I cared about. You can see for a while there we were having some fun with Game of Thrones. I don't tend to watch it, so I stayed out of it. But those things can kind of show up here, and then I can decide what I pay attention to. I think about it the same way as I think about trying to organize my inbox. I have folders I kind of hide away, maybe under another subfolder because I don't need them very often or they're older, but I want to retain. This is a way of kind of seeing, those things, or maybe setting rules that, yeah, this can go away. I'll check on it when I need it. It still comes up via search. If I would find that I need a topic and it happens to be in one of my hidden channels, no problem. And again, think about those private channels there. Do note, and this was a very specific burn finger here at HBS, we had a very excited member of our marketing team overnight create 300 groups because he wanted to do something which is great, which is create a planner for each one of his initiatives. Well, each of those planners would create a group if you create it through Planner. Now, if he went and created a marketing team and added planners, still not sure if he could have 300 now that I say that, but he could have created several planners within one team now. It was a one-for-one for a short time. That has changed now. So be careful of some of these other products. Think about that image I showed you early on with what the ones that you can create from Yammer, Teams, Outlook, all those. They all create a full group, which means they're all managed in the admin center. And then again, thinking about group chats versus channels. So this was an interesting discussion internally. When you're just doing an informal group chat, it's just a constant thread. There's no kind of, or it's just one thread. There's no breaking it up. Versus in a channel, you could start a discussion and reply to that thread and start another discussion and reply to that thread. So if you want to think about whether or not it's time to push over to a group and a team, so you can have those threaded conversations versus just an ad hoc group chat. This is something I think we're going to see people have concerns about with teams in a couple weeks as they get used to it, is they're losing track of multiple questions. It's like when we text each other and you're asking multiple questions, you can't even tell what you're replying to anymore. That can be what group chat can feel like. If you've got a true team together, HR team, finance team, IT, and they are a set unit, try to get them over to a channel in a team as soon as you can to kind of clear that space. This is one I haven't had to explain a ton. So if there's questions or clarity on that I can provide, let me know. All right. Last one I'll call out. These are, maybe we don't have the space to think about these today, but think about them as soon as you can. MFA, do you have multi-factor authentication coming up? Unfortunately, in these times, people are taking advantage and looking at vulnerabilities that are being created by quick deployments. So watch for the two-factor authentication there. That comes with your Office 365 subscription. At the least, try to do those on your most vulnerable accounts, your global admins, your privileged accounts. Think about a retention policy. Again, the security member on my team really wants some sort of default. So if you don't have a standing suggestion that is your corporate decision about retention, try to put something in place. This keeps you from some malicious intent to just delete things and not be able to get them back, because then the retention policy would still catch them, or somebody who's really trying to kind of clear out more unintentionally does that. But put in some sort of retention policy. It might be a 7-year, things like that. It might be as simple as a 3-month. Again, thinking about that guest access, you may want to glance at your secure score. Like, this can be put off at this stage of the game, I think, but look at those priority updates that you need to be making. MFA will probably make it on there if you don't have it already. And then just be thinking about who's going to support this. IT, of course, is going to be, but do you have a steering committee? Do you have some power users, adopters who are in and can coach from within departments and teams as this is moving fast? We've got a couple just training and resources. I'm happy to share the slide deck or any links here. So just as I was building this out, if you're looking for a couple of those graphs that I shared, or if you're even looking at licensing levels, jump to 365 is where you'd find the infographics from Matt Wade that I've brought up a couple times. If you're looking for just some Teams etiquette, I think this is a nice one that we could even all pin to our general channels here of how to act within Teams, and some good etiquette. Things like, hey, the plus or the little thumbs up can be great for I heard it, and they use the other ones for more of an emotional reactions. And then finally, if you have some high level licensing, which licensing to buy, I find this visual to be incredibly helpful. So this example on the right is if I get an E3, the ones that are grayed out, I do not automatically get. I'd have to add as an add-on or get a different license level. So these all happen to be from the same author in a few different spaces, but he's one that I think really explains things in a way that I find helpful. And finally, just a couple other reference points here, because there's great people out in the community, the private channels, the guest access. I don't think I have the PowerShell one out here, but a couple of those other links there. So that is what I have for you today. hopefully that made some sense. Again, try to kind of adjust for this being different than I maybe would have presented this a couple weeks back, but hopefully that is helpful as you start thinking about this.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So definitely opening it up to questions from the group. So fire away if you've got another question we haven't covered.
I have a couple just things that I've learned.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
One is just following on what Sarah said about the associating the team sites with, say, a communication SharePoint site. Not only so that the managers can have the top-down view, but I'll add another tab in to the SharePoint document library on the communication site, so that it's easy for somebody on the team if they have documents that they need to get to the communication site, they can just copy it right over. That's one. And then so when you were talking about the team templates, I want to figure out how to build that out. And then and I'm going to be looking for a Power Automate script to make it easier to join to associate that team site with the appropriate hub site. I thought I saw something a couple of months back, a year back. I'm also using ShareGate Apricot, and and at this point I'm coming up to my next month will be I think the first 90-day period. So I'm interested if anyone's had any experience with it so far. So no emails have gone out, but it seems to be working nicely as far as adding owners and keeping up with that. But if anyone's had any experience or tips on using it, again, I'm coming up to my very first time when it will start sending out the emails. And then just a last question to the WISPUG moderators, if the Teams meeting links can be put into the calendar invites. I kept looking for it today in the calendar invite and finally went back to the meetup site and found it. But
yep, on that one I'll take real quick. We will try. I'm new to Meetup as well, so just trying to figure out how to get that all going out. But we can definitely look, and we'll try to do that.
Yeah, very much appreciate all of this virtual meeting.
The one thing I would add in, and I like the idea of Power Automate and all that for connecting those, don't forget about the simple move to feature. So if you're following a site, a communication site, and you go to your team site, you can simply use move to send it to a document library. More of a manual step. It'd be great to have a box to click to say send it over there and set it up. But move to is a nice from the old send to.
Hey, Sarah, if I can ask a question, I'm Christine. Hey. First of all, this was amazing. I sat through a lot of them. We have rolled out Teams, thank goodness. And all of our regional offices throughout US and Canada are all remote now. So what I'm dealing with this week, which has been really crazy for a lot of us IT people, is we have not done anything with live events. And we need it. And so like literally I just turned on the feature during your presentation for live events with externals, so we can invite external people. Do you have any experience with it? Any recommendations?
No, I'm sorry. And I think this is going to be one of those things that hasn't come up until it's like needed. So as a consultant, I tend to tackle the things that come at me. So there might be other team members and consultants who have a better answer, but I don't have any live events advice.
Yeah, so I can jump in there. Yeah, live events, and we have that option for like this type of meeting. What it would do is it would eliminate what we're doing now, which is the cross chat. So with a live event versus a Teams meeting, it's all one-way communication, like a webinar. So with that being said, we wouldn't be able to do this two-way conversation. So that's why I didn't actually use it for this one, because I considered it. And then what happens with a live event is there are people designated as the presenters. There's people designated as, I forget what they're called, facilitators.
Facilitators.
Yeah, there's people behind the scenes that can monitor chat and things like that. So what would happen in this type of meeting, Sarah would have presented, everyone could have used chat to ask questions, but the chat wouldn't have gone to everybody until the moderators kind of let it out into the open or not. These moderators and facilitators could reply privately or to the entire group type of thing. There's also a delay on it. So if the person speaking live, they're speaking live, and then there's a slight delay for people watching it, but that also allows people, if they join late, they can pick it up from the beginning of the meeting and the event instead of right at that time. So logistically, you have to think about that. So if you have people in locations, how will that work with that time delay? So we did this meeting and we had a space like we normally do, and then we did a live event. There's definitely some logistics to kind of consider with that. But and then the last thing I'll try to find real quick and put in the chat today is Microsoft's actually offering free help on setting up a live event before your meeting, during your meeting, and after your meeting right now. So they definitely, they've got a free service out there as of this week to help people through this.
Is there a link to where that free service, do you have that, Jonathan?
Yep, I'm trying to find it.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah. My name's Alan. I got a question regarding permissions and teams. My company, we do a lot of unique permissions in our old SharePoint environment. We're adopting Teams right now, forced adoption with all the coronavirus stuff. But I get a lot of questions about one-off users needing access to a file, let's say on a team site, and they just need access to that one file or folder. What I've been doing, and I don't know if it's the right way, is actually launching SharePoint from that the file channel and it opening up in the SharePoint web browser and controlling the advanced permissions of a file or folder there to that unique user. Now, when you go look at the advanced permissions of that file or folder, it shows the MS team group in there, but it has no names or anything like that. And you could stop inheriting permissions and still have that group applied, but also add those one-off users. And that way the users could actually share the link. Is that the proper way to do something like that, just for like one-off users, not necessarily group or a large audience?
So two-part answer. That is the technically correct way to do that. And hopefully you're getting that in as few cases as possible and ask some questions about if that's really the best way to share it. Because if people, and this is maybe where we get to that pairing site, if people are supposed to be part of the team and they ideally they're part of the team, and we know there's always these one-off cases, so you've got it technically right. Go to SharePoint, give them site specific access. It does nothing about the group membership for teams, so you're doing that right. But I would guess what you're getting closer to is whatever team they're working in needs a delivery space. Can you review this? Here's an open space for review. Does that need to happen and be shared in a different way? So you might be seeing, especially if it's consistently a similar team, where they need to have a place they can push things out for people to review, maybe provide feedback on somewhere else. So but you've got, if you need to do that, that is the way to do it.
That makes sense. And then just to follow up from that a little bit. So when I open up, like, let's say SharePoint from Teams, like from the file tab, and I see the actual group and then I click on it, I don't see any members in there. I'm assuming that it's just pulling the members group from Teams. And
it is,
okay.
yeah.
It's kind of scary when you click on it and you don't see any
It's
users in
empty.
there. Like, okay, when
Yeah.
users saying they're having issues and you're trying to troubleshoot it. So
Yeah, I
okay.
agree. The panel that comes up when you do what's it say? Share site, whatever is from the gear, and you click down, that one will show you your membership appropriately. The classic pages behind the scenes that are the advanced settings for permissions, for whatever reason they haven't pulled it through there, don't Don't let that make you anxious. If you ever feel like you need to double check, use that more modern experience from the gear, and it's like site permissions, and then it'll say the group, and you should be able to click through. Otherwise, your team itself managing, that always matches. And if you have access to the admin center, you can check the groups back there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. There was a question earlier on around the rename. So Jeff had asked the URLs via redirect. Some of the legacy sites, if they're truly odd old team sites, I haven't tried one on a classic team site, but it should work. The idea is, I believe this is also still a script, but John or somebody else correct me if that has made it to the UI, you can actually rename it. It sticks behind the scenes almost the way you think of like a GUID sticking. It's always really that name, but then you can enter the secondary name almost similar to like an alias, and it will redirect to it there. So I believe that is all still PowerScript driven. I have not run it that UI.
It's actually in the UI now as well. I
It is.
don't know
Okay.
if that's just for the targeted people or standard release yet for sure, but you can definitely do it in the UI in the admin center to rename things. And then the other real technical underlying thing is that redirect. So what happens is the original site stays as a redirect site, which is a very special type of under the covers site for SharePoint. And then the new URL is the actual site. But I believe you can still get rid of that redirect site in like the admin center, so you can reuse the old name for something else. So you basically end up with two site collections by default: a redirect site collection and then the new one with the new name. But I do believe you can remove the redirect site and then reuse that first name. So.
Yeah, I think I've really attempted that on one. It hasn't come up a ton. I think it's going to come up more in the future here.
Yeah, and then the PowerShell is there to do the renaming, and then there's a site swap as well for like the root site collection that's in PowerShell. That if you want to make your root site collection the one without /site/ anything modern, for example, because you're an old timer that has a classic home site. That site swap can work. You can swap your search site too. That was built a long time ago when you started your tenant as well.
Just going to try to quick track down the PowerShell for restricting some of these things. Where did I note a couple PowerShells here? Or was anybody able to grab those up while I was chatting?
I did not check.
Okay.
Back to private channels as well.
Yep.
One thing I've heard people run into, and I haven't fully tested it out either yet, is with the private channel and your classification labels don't stick correctly. So for those, the private channel creates a new site collection. That's another really weird site collection under the covers. That's associated with your team site collection, but it's a different SharePoint site collection. But that one doesn't retain some of the classification labels and things like that. So keep that in mind. Private channels, my advice is, yeah, you can use them. I wouldn't overuse them. I think they need some work under the covers. I'm worried about that other site collection. That's something weird. But try it. It's instead of the 80-20 rule, I'd probably go 95-5 on that one. But keep those things in mind because other things may not stack well on top of it yet. I'm sure it'll get figured out, just like that 5,000 item limit. They'll figure that out.
That makes me think something I didn't bring up because it almost doesn't come up, but we got a lot of new people to it, is subsites. Don't create them. Just stay away from them because similar to what you just said with the private channels, the products don't stack well with it. You can't attach a team to it. Planners, it's just stay away from subsites. Create yourself a secondary SharePoint site. Create yourself a separate team. I have very, very few cases for a subsite, maybe an archive of old data, if that. I have strong feelings about that the way I used to about folders.
All right. Any other teams related questions next? Well,
is there something that Do you know where the link is for how to set up a company-wide or org-wide team site? Is there a docs.microsoft.com link?
Let's see if I can find one while I'm looking for my PowerShell link as well.
Yep, we'll get someone to post it on the chat here. Right, any other questions or otherwise any other kind of use cases or experiences with rolling out Teams, something that worked, something that really didn't work, that would be great for people to share these days?
Is it the Teams recordings that get saved, and then you can open them and stream, and then get the transcript from the Teams, the audio recording?
Yep.
So I found this is Rachel at Rockwell. I found a interesting little app on Twitter. Love Twitter, and I can put the link out as soon as I find the email where I sent it to myself. But so if you look at Teams, right on the left, you get activity, chat, Teams, calendar, right? And you can pin other apps there, right? So like you can pin your planner app there or Poly or whatever, right? This is a little tiny app that you build, and basically what it's called Get Started, and what it does is it puts another little app and I put it at the top right above activity, but it allows you to basically bring out tabs and go to basically the SharePoint or URL of your choice. I have used them for Teams training, because if you have a department, you know, a corporate intranet site or some kind of user adoption site or something where you're posting learning resources or videos or whatever, you can put it right there in Teams, pinned to the top of that left-hand bar, right on top of the word activity. It's got the Microsoft logo on it. You click it, and then it takes you to, you know, whatever links your users, you've decided to give your users. And I really like it. Everybody I've showed it to really likes it, and I'm working on hopefully getting it rolled out here when we replace Skype later this summer. But I can send you guys that link if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thanks. I didn't know if anybody, we're full in for Teams for Calling. If anybody is interested, I can tell you how that works. We ported our numbers over in October, and not all of our regional offices have not. So I am doing some emergency work trying to get phone systems functioning at home. Would people be interested in that information right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
So for us, we're all in on Teams. So our headquarters, which is in DC, this is not new for us. So thank goodness, we can do everything from answering the front door if somebody rings the front door from home. So that's not a problem. It's already been rolled out. Our regional offices, no one rolled it out yet. And so they're all calling me. Literally, I'm having messages flow in while this is going on. And what we're doing is we're having them forward their on-prem phone systems, at least their main lines. We're deploying them a Microsoft phone number. We're giving them a license for Microsoft domestic calling, and they're just taking their phone system main line and forwarding it to a Teams user. And from there, they can then forward it to other users who don't have Teams for calling. So we're not trying to, like today, this week, we're not trying to roll out our port over numbers. It's too complicated to do really fast. And lots of times Microsoft will delay us by weeks even to port our numbers over. So what I'm doing is at least starting with main lines and saying, yep, I can set you up with a Teams number. You forward your main line to that number. We assign that number to a user, and then that user can then forward to other users within Teams who don't have domestic calling. So just in case that helps you, we're finding this is working pretty well for doing really quick triage of main phone numbers in our regional offices.
Excellent. That's great.
All right. And anything else on Teams anyone wants to share? Obviously, it's timely. It can be a very helpful tool these days. So we're all probably well into it because of what we do for a living, but we can definitely help our organizations with it.
I guess two features of it that I didn't call out, and There, don't forget you can blur. So if you can see my screen now that I've got it blurred, so we're going to often have pets and kids and other things going on here. The other thing to note is you could turn on live captions. It is in preview, but I've seen it to be pretty successful. These are all in the ... of the meeting itself. So if you click on that, you'll have both a blur and the live captions. So if you're having a hard time hearing people, maybe that will help. So just kind of two more functional pieces of the product itself.
A question about some other functionality.
Yeah.
The being able to force a email notification going out as a push rather than having people add them. Because my understanding is it's Teams defaults to you have to say you want to get a notification. Is there a way to get it so that you can have some teams where it's going to be on by default, or you can force it to be on?
I'm thinking. So yeah, definitely it's a per user preference around different notification settings. I haven't pushed it to anyone yet. So if anyone has, jump on in. I would guess Power Automate is how you'd have to do that if it's not built in somewhere. Because I think a lot of that is, designed on purpose to be preference based for notifications and things like that. That being said, you could probably with device management and other tools on top of Teams and everything force that setting through Intune or config manager and stuff like that too. So you might be able to do it by layering it with kind of device management as well.
Okay, one other question, again, related to notifications. I'm visually impaired, so I'm looking for something that would get the notification to jump out to the middle of my monitor. I have a huge monitor and sometimes I just don't get down to looking at the lower right corner where the notifications appear. If anybody knows of anything for accessibility that way.
Yeah, I don't know about the accessibility issue, but I do want to chime in on this way the notifications are done. So, I mean, I have zero issue. I mean, one of the benefits of Teams for me is the ability for each user to customize which notifications they get. That is one of the big selling points that I use. But my wish would be that it would be an opt-out rather than an opt-in, right? So, because if I create a new team, if I have a team and I'm going to create a new channel, I have no problem with people opting out of notifications, but it's a real pain to have to make everybody go and opt in to every channel or something like that. And I just wish we could sort of do a flip where by default, you get notifications for all the channels for the teams that you're in, and then you just go in and opt out of the ones you don't want. That's all. I just want three birds.
Okay.
Not much. Small ask.
Yeah, I was trying to think about poking around in the back end of all the new settings that are in the Team Admin Center, if you could force that. I know you can, when you set up a new channel, make it show for everybody by default, but they haven't gone so far as the, kind of switch the default notifications that I have run into yet.
I know it's a thing on User Voice, so if anyone else is interested in that, go look it up on User Voice and vote for it.
Yeah.
Will do. Yeah. When you get the notification on, was it Friday afternoon at 3:20 that don't come into work for the next couple of weeks, that's where using Teams for these sort of email notifications would have been nice to have, because that's literally how things went.
Yeah, it's particularly important for, especially during that transition period, which, we're in right now, where Teams is getting broader use and everything else, but we still have a lot of newbies, right? And unfortunately, we don't do organized training. Rockwell just has too many people. We just don't do it. So I can't tell you the number of calls and emails and chat messages I get on a daily or weekly basis about why aren't my users getting my messages. So anyway,
one thing to note on that,
that's my rant.
I don't tend to miss too many, but I will often overnight get an email from Teams, hey, you're missing out, you missed something. You can lower, and these might be tips and tricks to send people in lieu of Microsoft actually switching the way that we'd like it to work. maybe it instead of waiting an hour, if you have not replied to something, send it every 10 or 15 minutes. So those settings are up individually still, but under your little individual character icon, your little photo of yourself up there in your presence, you can come into notifications, and under other, there is missed activity emails. Mine is set to an hour, but you can set it as low as every 10 minutes or as soon as possible. I know none of us want more email, but it might be a way until this becomes habit and everybody's living in it to get people reminded to go out there that they're missing stuff. So that might be just a tip or trick to send out to people.
All right.
Great if you're an admin, not so great if you're trying to push adoption and encourage adoption and are not an admin. So
I totally understand, and that's a hard position to be in right now, or anytime really.
All right. So flipping the conversation just a little bit, I think. So thank you, Sarah. You did a great job. Great information. We'll definitely work together, get some things posted here to the group so everyone can get access to some of this. So from here, we just have open discussion for today. So, and obviously the biggest thing to maybe talk about is crisis communication, things like that. So I'll post, Microsoft did create kind of a sample app, Power App, that also ties into Teams and does all these wonderful things that I'll post into the chat right now. So the question first is, has anyone done anything like this, even the specific Microsoft crisis communication app? Is anyone using Teams or Power Apps or something, SharePoint? How are you guys using kind of the tools we all talk about each time with crisis communication? Are there any good things to share with the group to help in these times?
At a team level, my manager has us all monitoring our general tab, the chats in there, for any kind of news coming out about telecommuting, team activities. But that started, I think, last Friday afternoon. It's coming every day. Come in and start checking. Want to try to learn how to get my cell phone to at least get some kind of buzz notification on it too. If I get a team notification, if I'm up not I'm in the house getting a cup of coffee. Years ago, when I could still see, I used to have my Fitbit tied to something, and that way, if I went to go grab a cup of coffee, I would know if somebody's trying to get a hold of me from the team. But now I'm looking for something from my phone to do that. I think if I can get the team app to make an audible and tie it in with my Teams team account, that would help with this crisis management time.
Sure. I don't know of anything off the top of my head. Some of that works with Teams. If you're logged in on your computer, though, you're not going to get much on your phone, things like that. So some of that's the nuance of it, that you have to be kind of logged off on your computer so it knows to notify you on your phone or other devices as well.
Okay. Yeah, I spent 7 years previously working remotely for a couple different companies, so this is not new, but I got to kind of shake off the cobwebs.
Yeah, and on the notifications, I'm just looking right now on my Android app. You can set that either way. So only when inactive on your desktop, or always, even if you're active on your desktop. You can set quiet hours on those notifications and what you're trying to do. The buzz itself, I would guess you can do that, but maybe not.
Okay. I'll ask my wife to take a look at my Android phone settings. Because sometimes you just, now that I'm at home all the time,
Yeah.
upstairs, upstairs, downstairs, go get a cup of coffee and miss something key.
Yeah, new world. So, Sarah mentioned it at times like etiquettes. I think that's going to get redefined here throughout this time as well. Joking with Sarah because we've worked together in the past, and she has little kids. I have big kids, so I lose bandwidth. She has people coming up to them and talking to them. But we're all going to hear dogs and kids in the background, and we're all just going to have to get over it and move forward.
Yeah. My daughter used to do her piano practice when I'd be on global calls. People would rather hear her than listen to me.
It's like having beautiful hold music behind, while you have the call.
I was going to also, just to go along with the general conversation, I attended the GlobalCon 1, the virtual conference, and now that Microsoft Ignite the Tour of Chicago has been canceled, I heard that there's a GlobalCon 2 virtual free conference coming in June. Had a lot of good speakers on that as well. So like WISPUG, like we're doing here, just other ways to stay knit in to the rest of our tech community.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know I just got news yesterday, no SharePoint conference this year, so registration pushes it out. They're not even doing it virtual. They are just pushing it out a year. Disappointed, but the smart move there. I also attended GlobalCon. I found a lot of those really helpful. I will probably also have some time now available to go back and listen to ones I missed during that week.
Yeah, I got the all access pass too. So
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Same here.
All right. With that, it's still open floor for any type of discussion whatsoever. Otherwise, if there's nothing brewing, we'll just kind of depart here. But brewing, yeah. Coffee, it's morning.
Oh.
I have two weird things I'd like to ask about.
Sure.
So weird thing number one, it used to be that when you scheduled a meeting, so go into Teams, right? Schedule a meeting, put it in a channel, right? And then you go to invite people. That's another weird thing we'll talk about in a second. But originally you were limited and could only invite people that were part of the team, which at the time I thought was great because that way, your meeting is limited to people who are part of the team because that's why you scheduled it in a channel to begin with, right? Okay. But recently, things appear to have changed, and now I can invite whoever I darn well please to this meeting, even though it's tagged to a private team channel.
I do not have experience with that, so I'm waiting for anyone else that might have run into that.
I was doing the same pause because I don't tend to schedule my meetings out of there. My guess would be this is a change from Microsoft, and the intention is it gets on the Teams that channel or Teams calendar, but it might be for beyond that group. And so there might have been complaints, but no, I actually don't tend to schedule mine that way, so I don't have a lot of experience with that, unfortunately.
So I do it that way mainly because well, that way everybody who's in the team, which leads to weirdness number 2 in a minute. But that way, anybody who's in the team that didn't get a direct invite can still access the meeting, which I've traditionally used as sort of an optional feature, right? But the other thing that it does is that if anyone who's attending the meeting and so far part of the team pushes the record button, that recording is automatically uploaded to the stream group, not a stream channel. That's different. It's the stream group. Which is super nice for those of us who always forget to push the record button. It also means you're not running around trying to figure out who has the recording and whether or not they can upload it or whatever. So anyway, I use it all the time for that. But it is weird now that I had a whole go around with somebody yesterday. So part 2 of this weirdness has to do with the whole invitation procedure. So I have a couple of teams for some response groups and things that are pretty large. There's like 100 people in them. It's a lot. So I've gotten conflicting reports from different people. So sometimes some people claim that when you created a Teams meeting and you put it in a channel, you did not need to actually invite people. that you could just not invite people, or just invite the name of the team and then everybody would get invited. I would love to get that feature to work, but I have yet to be able to do it. And so have been stuck trying to make sure I add all 100 odd people to this stupid meeting. Thoughts? Did I do it wrong? Is it broken?
I'm literally trying to quickly test that because
Yeah.
So the part of what makes this
yeah.
hard is that Microsoft just changed the UI. So it used to be like up until like 2 weeks ago when you opened the calendar and, you know, went to Teams and Calendar, opened it up, it had all the calendar stuff on sort of the leftish side. And then on the right-hand side was this sort of list all the people that should come to the meeting, right? And, you know, in sort of that right-hand column sort of thing. They've changed it to a more Outlook-y, you know, required versus optional people now. But anyway, so yeah, I used to be able to, so I was talking to somebody, and actually one of Drew's colleagues, and Corey, and he swore that he's able to, and he was actually frustrated by the fact he didn't want his whole team to get an invite. He just wanted some people to get an invite. And it kept sending invites to the entire team. I would desperately like my invites to go to my entire team without having to type in individual names, and cannot seem to make it happen. You can't type in the name of the group, right? Because Teams is not it has, I don't know, I think it has to do with an Outlook Exchange Connect. I don't know. Thoughts,
I'm wondering
advice?
what's the timing of when these different groups were created. Are yours more recent? Because, it's 6-8 weeks ago, might even be further back than that. They switched so that, that's further back than that, that Outlook doesn't actually get fully created with them. So that was what I was getting at.
Yeah, that was like that was like a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is all well after that. This was Drew, when were you and Corey over?
Okay, perfect.
A couple months ago, last fall.
You know, my timing on this is always, it all feels like it's moving too fast. So everything feels like it was just a couple months ago, but.
Yeah, no, this was all definitely, I think in this was, he and I did the head-to-head comparison in October of 2019. So just a few months ago, but like I said, I would still love to be able to, does anyone have ideas when I have a large team, how do I do an invite in a channel where everybody gets an invite without having to type in all 100 names? And then like, because I can only have one tab open in Teams, it makes it super difficult to like go look at my team membership list, right? How do you look at your team membership list? I obviously don't have these 100 people memorized. See where I'm going with this?
Yeah, we're literally dealing with this today, and I do not have the solution. I'm hoping to figure it out today. So
my workaround has been to open Teams in the browser and keep the member list open in the browser.
Nice.
While I use a separate browser window to schedule the meeting and manually type in all the 100 stupid people names.
So just in case anybody else is dealing with this, what I was going to try today is I went to the admin console and I had all members of a team. I checked the box in the @Teams admin console, or group admin console, excuse me, to have everybody subscribed to the events. And so I'm hoping that if I schedule a meeting, it will actually send an email to each of the individual people and not just send it to like the group within Outlook, which is hidden now.
So when you say Teams so again, understanding that not all of us, so admin.
Office 365 admin center.
Okay, we don't have access. So for those of us who don't have access to that, I'm talking about regular, ordinary human team owner people. So like I can go to manage team and see my list of people.
That I don't know. If I find out today though, I'll share it.
That would be great. Thanks. I'd appreciate it. Because this is making me a crazy person, or crazier person.
Two other quick questions. One, did Microsoft finally permit enabling home sites for the rest of us? About 2 months ago, I saw the announcement we could add home sites. So set the home site, went through the rigmarole of getting the PowerShell together, only to go, you're not ready yet. I've been kind of monitoring the message center. The other question was around, has anybody done anything significant with Microsoft Shifts and Teams, inside of Teams?
I'd have to double check. I am on targeted release on a lot of mine, so I don't know if it's on standard yet for the home sites. I have seen it in play a little bit here, so we can probably find out where that one is. And then shifts, I had played with Staff Hub a little bit, and then I got my finger kind of burned on that one, so I haven't dug into shifts because I played with it right before it went into Teams, so I don't have experience with that one.
Yeah, aloe vera, that'll help with all the finger burns. Well, thank you very much. This is very good. Very timely.
Yeah, I didn't realize quite how timely it would be. Hopefully I was able to adjust appropriately, and thanks for all the great questions.
Sarah, this is Rachel. I would like to steal shamelessly from your graphics for a thing to do, but I can't download the file.
Oh.
Am I doing something like really wrong?
I don't know.
Besides clicking on the link?
Yeah. I had
Well,
put in, yeah, you
Sarah,
can, I don't know if you're able to, John, download it and get it out to a more easily shared space. Yeah, I didn't really brand it. Feel free to use it. It's, you know, it's all references from Microsoft, some of my opinions, but in this time, use it as you need to get yourselves going in your own organizations.
Yeah, but it looks like we'll probably get it posted a different way as well. So we'll get that. Sarah and I will work on that.
Okay, thanks. It was an excellent job, Sarah. Kudos.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, then at this point, we'll just kind of call it. Give you a few minutes to walk and put down your stairs at home and go to the kitchen. And I mean, we'll all work, right? But that's what we're all doing these days. Go take the dog out, feed that, pet the dog, and
That
hang
load
in
my
there.
laundry in the dryer.
Yeah. See,
Don't forget your dishes. Yeah.
More powerful people after all of this. The smog is going to go away. This is going to be great. So, all right. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and we'll get things posted as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.